Hey guys, good afternoon here. It is a beautiful Sunday. It's freezing cold, but it's like, it feels nice. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, -10, but anyway,
the sun's just shining beautiful.
yeah. So we're clearly inside because, I'm in a t-shirt, which is just lovely.
That's not any different than what you'd wear outside.
Yeah, it's not. But basically we're here, we're gonna try and start a new, I don't know, feature? Is it called a feature? I don't know.
Sharing something new with you guys from our life.
Yeah. So we have been doing this. It's called The Story. And so basically it's our church is doing it.
It's a 30-week series.
31 week.
31 weeks going through the entire Bible.
And it basically, goes through the entire Bible in chronological order.
Yep.
And just kind of helps give a kind of holistic.
Yes, and as our pastor calls it, it's the top view and the upper view and the lower view.
Yeah, the upper story and the lower story.
The upper story, that's what it is. So we are trying to get a balance of the upper story and the lower story within the Bible. Mm-hmm. The upper story being the bigger picture of what everything...
kind of God's plan.
Yeah, like what everything kind of falls into. Like, oh, that happened 300 years ago. This was the goal. Yeah. And the lower story is what we see in day-to-day life.
And what people in the Bible saw in their day-to-day life.
Yeah.
So the cool part of it is it's not a story. It's pretty much, I think it's like 80% scripture or something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, directly from the Bible. It's just kind of, I think really what it does...
They just take out the thy and just kind of make it shorter.
Yeah.
That's what it is. They take out those little extra lines that are just fillers. So they walked...
And
to the left. So it kind of takes out that walking to the left. So, yeah.
Yeah. So,
it's by, you should probably tell them who it's by. It's by Max Lucado and Randy Frazee.
Yeah. Ooh. Anyway, so that's a bit of an introduction. So far, we are...
8 weeks.
8 weeks in. We are a little behind the scenes in terms of presenting it to you. But, so we're going to pick it up from week 6. Yeah. And then, so hopefully we'll do a little bit of catch up and then kind of roll with you once a week here.
Yeah.
So that's the goal. So that's the introduction to it. Hopefully you guys enjoy. I think for the most part, for the most part, I think we're enjoying.
Yeah.
We're enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like it's for me, it's definitely just I just know the kind of. Generalities kind of thing, but this kind of brings in some specifics, but it's not boring.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'm loving it so far. I think it helps me recollect because I have certain chapters in the Bible that I'm not gonna lie, when I read them I'm just I'm falling asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And it's those chapters I think Deuteronomy's one of them, or Numbers. I can't remember which one of the two. Might just be both of them, where it just lists a lot of history and genealogical orders, and I'm I don't want to read 3 chapters of whose son gave birth to who and whose daughter gave birth to whom. So yeah, this kind of helps me kind of read that without actually reading it. I still get to know the lineage that's important.
Yeah. Cool.
So let's get started. We've done a long introduction.
So week 6, titled
Wandering, Israel's Very Long Journey.
Perfect.
Long road trip. That's what it is. Sorry, I misread that. Long road trip.
Already into the mistakes. Okay.
Alrighty. So, I guess we can start off. Do you want to just give them a general idea of what was going on at that time?
Sure. Do you want me to do that?
How
about you do that? You do that. Since we're 2 weeks behind, you just start that.
So this chapter is based on Numbers. And in the chapter, I guess in the Bible chapter of Numbers, that's when we have the Israelites They were on their journey from Egypt to the Promised Land.
Right.
So this is when they got caught in the desert for 40 years because all they could do was that to God, just complain.
It was 40 years, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So pretty much what happened was they were on their journey, they got to a point, and Moses and Joshua were given instructions by God. Mm-hmm. And at some point, Moses and Joshua were just hey, we're going to do our own thing. But that's another side story. So during that journey, the Israelites started to complain a lot because I feel it's very human to go from worse to bad, but still somehow feel worse was better. It's like, I don't know how they say the grass is kind
always
of
greener
on the other side, and then you get it, you're like, oh, that grass is terrible.
So backstory, I'll add some filler here, is the Israelites, they're still the Israelites at this point, so they were slaves in Egypt. So it's like, not quite a good life.
Yeah.
And it is funny how you leave that life of slavery, and like this is probably like legit slavery. Like obviously you weren't there, but like whips and I don't know.
Hard labor.
Yeah. And but they leave that, and then they only remember the good in that. Like one of the things was they were at least fed, and they were, because obviously you got to feed slaves to keep them alive so they can do your work.
Yeah.
But you're only keeping them alive to do that dirty work, and so in the wandering, they would complain about that, and that was a big
they'd complain about not having. It wasn't they didn't have food; they had food.
It was the same.
It was they had too much of the same. They had manna.
Manna. Sorry.
Which we learned translates to what is this?
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was that. I don't think someone's ever told me that, but that's what the word manna translates to. Is what is it? Because they didn't know what to call it. They're just like, okay, we'll just call it. What is it? I think it's kind of like I was saying at church to you that day. It's like nowadays we say whatchamacallit. I think that's the translation. Some people say that.
Sure.
I don't really say it, but I know people say it.
Okay, Webby.
Anyway, I think it's kind of like that.
So, in their wandering, they were complaining always about having too much, what is it? Yes. Getting real PO'd, but then...
And then God was like, alright, you want some meat? I'm going to give you some meat.
So
and they had so much meat that they couldn't even...
It was coming out of their orifices.
Yeah. So a lot of them died. A lot of the ones who were complaining specifically died from not being properly nutritioned through just eating meat. Mm-hmm. So that was kind of a thing, and that goes into, I guess we can just take it step by step, because there were 3 types of complaining they did, and the first was they complained about the hardship. Mm-hmm. And we learned through that story of their hardship in terms of having to, walk and... oh my gosh, we have to walk through the desert compared to being slaves. So they were complaining that they had to walk through the desert and it's hot. So that was the first type of complaining they did, and we learned that complaining arouses the anger of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so then going further, they complained about their food, which we just talked about. Mm-hmm. And the complaining, as we're told, became a rejection of God's providence, a lack of faith, and a lack of trust in who God is. Because it's kind of like, well, who's this God you're talking about that is sending us on this journey and just giving us manna?
Because and the silly thing is like, God had done a lot of things for them in just a couple, like just a little while ago.
Yeah, it was just how many days? I think it was like 30 days of journey.
It wasn't long in, and they started complaining, and it's like, like how quickly he forgets, kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of anyway. It is what it is.
It is what it is, and in that complaining, the other 2 points about it is that complaining causes others to be aggravated. Yeah. And complaining against God has consequences. So taking that point to real life, I think a lot of times we complain, and like with it aggravating others, is like someone else might be content in their life. They might be just cool, like I'm good, I'm happy. But then when you come around,
complaining's contagious.
Yeah, and you start complaining like, now that you mention it, my bed isn't that great. Now that you mention it, I don't like my hair. And next thing you know, everyone's complaining, and no one's ever happy when they're complaining. So now you're all miserable, and it just...
It snowballs. Yeah, definitely. And it is funny. Like, I'm not going to plead innocence here.
No.
I'm a complainer, but it's...
We all fall victim to it.
Yeah.
So the third point is that they complained about their leader. They complained about Moses.
Moses not doing his job.
Yeah. They're like, come on, Moses.
And it wasn't, I guess, it wasn't him not doing his job. It was they weren't happy with who he was, right?
Yes. Yeah. And his brother also complained, Aaron.
Yeah.
And, what's her name? I don't remember her
sister?
name. Yeah, the sister.
It starts with an M.
Was it Miriam?
It could have been Miriam, yeah. And so what that did to the leader, so to Moses is like, whoa, I don't want to deal with this complaining.
Yeah.
And we all, I think, experience that, in that when somebody complains to you, you're just like, hey, you know what?
I'm just doing my job.
You complain to them. And that's kind of what Moses did.
Yeah.
It was like, hey God, like this is not cool. These people are complaining. do something about it. But that didn't make God very happy.
No. So, moving on, I guess. The next one, they complain about a lot of things. At a point in the story, they sent people, kind of spies, I guess, to go to the promised land, to go survey it and take a look and be like, all right, so what are we going to?
What's there?
Ahead?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the spies came back and they gave their report. And people weren't so happy about the report.
Right, because most of the reporters, because there was a number of these spies or investigators, and most of them gave a report like, there's a lot of big dudes over there, there's a lot of, there's a strong army, there's fortified cities, like, this is crazy. We're not going to, like, we can't just take this.
Yeah.
And, the way it's kind of understood is, like, the Israelites are, kind of just small people, and they're just, like, looking up at these giants is kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
And, except one, was it, who was the good, there were two good reporters, right? And they were like, whoa, no, like...
It's a beautiful land.
It is the promised land, and God's going to be with us, and He's going to provide for us because He said He would. So there were only, of all the reporters that kind of came back, only two of them were honest, or were still believing, were faithful.
But we all know how bad news is. It spreads faster than good news sometimes, and that was what happened there. And in that situation, complaining about things also shows a lack of trust in God. If you trust God, I think I've read this before, you either complain or you trust. You can't do both. You cannot do both. So if you're going to trust, just trust. There's no complaining allowed. If you're going to complain, you can't say you trust something or someone if you're just going to complain, because then you...
Like me with the dishes. I'm just kidding. Anyway,
Sure.
So, back to this. So based on that, God was like, you know what? Consequence. Basically, there was a consequence to be had for the actions of the Israelites not being faithful and not believing that God would provide. So He said, you know what? You guys complaining? Here's what I was going to give you, but you guys are kind of acting up. It's like the kids in the back seat. You don't get it anymore. You get to see it.
And you got to stay in this desert land and wait for 40 years.
Yeah. And
because you shouldn't have gone ahead. You should have trusted me and known that I was going to give you something great. And even in your spying, you should have still trusted me.
Yeah.
And that was really unfortunate because I think the entire journey was supposed to take 40 days.
Yeah.
And it took them 40 years to get there. Like, could you imagine that?
Wasn't that a punishment on its own? Right. Yeah.
Like, could you imagine that you're supposed to go down the street, it's supposed to take you 10 minutes, and all of a sudden that takes you 10 years? Just because you just trust.
Your math is just... anyway.
10 minutes, 10 years.
Yeah, but it was 40 days to 40 years.
10 days and 10 years. You guys get my point.
We're taking a trip all the way across the continent.
Yeah.
That's about 10 days. Sure.
Yeah, and then it just takes
10 years.
Yeah, and it's like...
to be honest, who would do that? There are
no
very
one would
few.
choose that.
No, like, it's crazy to think, or what I think is, like, back in the day, like, these Israelites, sure, they complained, but they were, like, some of them persevered.
Yes.
I wonder how many of them who gave up.
Yeah.
Altogether, kind of thing. And it's wild. It's like, there's such a vast kind of differences in personal, like, kind of perseverance and things like that, and it's crazy just to put yourself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And what would you do?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's tough, and it's not a matter of, just looking back to 500 years ago. It's also taking this into today. A lot of us face situations where it's like, I want to do this, but it's going to take me 2 years. Should I do it? Should I not?
Yep.
So then you spend the next 2 years...
debating it.
Yeah, debated. Should I do it? Should I not? It's like, if you'd just done it, you'd be done.
It's like kids with doing chores around the house. You like the amount of times, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sorry, Mom. And like growing up, it's like, do the dishes. No.
Yeah, like, argue back and forth. Like, you'd be done by now.
Yeah, it's stupid, and I'm sorry. And like it's. You can only learn from your mistakes. Yeah. And so I think people have to make mistakes, but you need to learn from them.
Because they do have a cost sometimes. These mistakes do have a cost, and are we willing to pay the cost?
Yeah.
So, but now let's take this all back from complaining and bring it to the positive side of, as you said, what do you do? What's the, kind of, not the right thing, but what's the better way to look at things? The more positive way. And I think the first thing was stop complaining and praise God. And I think that's important for me personally because a lot of times it's easy to focus on the problems going on in life. It's so easy to do that because worrying keeps you occupied. It's like because you have to think of what to do, how to do it. But sometimes just chill and just be like, I'm happy.
And
I'm grateful.
And what's worrying gonna do? Nothing.
Not a thing. Another quote. Worrying only takes away tomorrow's joys today. So, I should stop saying quotes I don't remember well.
One more quote. The nose on the face is the smeller of good deeds.
What? Stop it. I'll put it in the description box, okay? It's like worrying takes away the joys of tomorrow today.
Don't worry, you got it.
Anyway, so that's the first thing. You want to say the second one?
What was the second one?
Stop doubting.
No, I'm cheating. Stop doubting, but trust God. And yeah, it's like you bringing in the negativity breeds more negativity, and that's not, that's again, it's almost, they're really synonymous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I think a perfect example that I just thought about right now is like taking it to like our parents. When we were younger as kids, did you ever say to your mom, are we gonna have food to eat for the next 2 days? I'm sure, like, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, that does happen,
right.
But in a situation where you do have food, let's say you look in the cupboard and there is food there that'll feed you for the next week.
Yeah.
And then you go to your mom and say, hey mom, do we have food for the next 5 days? Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
That's just like, really, kid? I just bought groceries, they're sitting in the cupboard, and you're gonna ask me, do we have food? Of course we have food. I've provided for you, I've done what I'm supposed to do or what I should do, but yet you don't trust me.
Yeah.
And
you're doubting.
Yeah, you're doubting that. It's like you're doubting there's food there. Wouldn't have.
So are you saying you did that as a kid?
No. But I'm saying like it's an example. Yeah, like it wouldn't make sense to do that at all.
Yeah.
But that's what we do when we say we trust God or we believe God or whatever. But then we're just like, I don't know. I can't do anything with my life. I'm a failure. It's like, no, you're not. You were made for something. You're gonna do it. Just believe and work. So,
Point 3.
Point 3, last but not least. Start living. And choose God. Plain and simple. Yeah. Live your life. Be positive. Don't complain. As hard as it is, we both challenged ourselves to that actually. And now whenever we do notice, we're like, you're complaining. Take it down a notch.
The best part is when you bring it up like that, when the other person is complaining. Oh, man.
Well, we're working on a great way to bring it up, but we are like, it is very...
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a challenge because it is really for the better. Like, it's just breathing that positive energy.
Yeah, take a moment.
Better for everything.
Like just breathe in, give yourselves a minute or two to breathe and look for something positive and just hang on to that thread. Yeah. And all will be well.
Yeah.
So that's our first little webisode of
the story. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it. We'll be back next week. What's next week's chapter?
You have it with you.
I know, but I just figured you'd be... I can't read, so give me a second.
Commands.
Just get out of here.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'll get it. There's wandering.
Well, here's your bookmark.
The battle begins. God, she tries to get in
the battle begins, guys, and we will see you then. Have a great week. Bye.